All right, so next we're going to talk about mindsets and specifically entrepreneurial mindsets. So, how many of you have show of hands, or feel free to put annotates or reactions in the chat? How many of you have heard the term mindsets, right? Have a positive mindset, have an open mindset, have a creative mindset. We've probably all heard these terms before. And one thing we're going to talk about is entrepreneurial mindsets. And we're going to give some practical tips, Madeline and I, on what it looks like to have a entrepreneurial mindset. And I'll share an example first before we go into entrepreneurial mindsets. For those who may be less familiar with what mindsets are, I'll share some examples with positive mindsets. So if somebody were to have a positive mindset, that may be, they're joyful, they're happy, they're creative, right? They're open to new ideas. They're happy about things in terms of even if circumstances don't align with what they're wanting, they're still seeing, right, a silver lining. They're still seeing positivity in the circumstance, even if it doesn't look positive, right? So those are examples of positive mindsets. And with an entrepreneurial mindset, we want to talk a little bit about how we as women, as growing leaders, as women growing in our careers and our professions, how we can have an entrepreneurial mindset and bring that to the table. So first is solving problems. This is really important to just be problem solvers, right? If we see a problem, we're not just bringing the problem to the table, we're also bringing a solution. And that's what problem solving looks like. It looks like being solution oriented in having an entrepreneurial mindset. The next is take initiative, right? Don't wait for somebody to do it. Don't wait for somebody to think of an idea. I saw so many great ideas in the chat when we did that icebreaker of all of the creative ideas all of the phenomenal women on this call have. And taking initiative is so important, right? Because we have all these creative ideas, and sometimes just taking a risk, sometimes just starting something, sometimes just writing down our goals. It can be something as practical as sitting down and being creative and dreaming of your ideas and all those things. That can be taking initiative. Confidence, as we go into this middle pillar, you can see confidence is another key aspect of entrepreneurial mindsets. We talked a lot about this in the first session, and I know a lot of people were really interactive in that last session. And confidence is so important, right? As a business leader, as a woman in the marketplace, in your career, in school, and all those things, bringing confidence to the table. And even if we don't feel it, carrying ourselves in a positive way. So having a confident mindset is believing that we're valuable, right? We can make a difference. We have the skills we need. We bring something to the table. Next is networking. Networking is it can be kind of a lifestyle, right? And not just a moment thing, not just bumping into somebody once and networking, but just bringing it into your everyday life, that you naturally network with people that you come in contact with, you share creative ideas with, you share business ideas, you share growth ideas, development ideas. This is all part of an entrepreneurial mindset, bringing networking into everyday life. And then as we go over to the right side of the slides, resilience. So resilience is such a powerful term because it means carrying on, pushing through, being adaptable, right? And so being resilient means that maybe we won't get it the first time. Maybe we won't get it the second time, right? Many great, great leaders all over the globe had ideas that they failed on the first couple times and then ended up creating something really incredible. So resilience, right? Persevering, even if it doesn't look like we have everything we need or all the resources, we're resilient. Adaptable, being adaptable to conditions in the marketplace, trends, all those things. We want to be agile, flexible, and creative. So you can see at the bottom is the last two, agile and creative, which go hand in hand with flexibility, adaptability, creativity. So we want to be flexible and creative. And another way to say that is agile and innovative. Madeline, anything else you would add to entrepreneurial mindsets or tips or just practical ways somebody can do that?
I I think this covers a lot of the key traits that you should have. I would say being agile and innovative. I really like the third box as a whole, being resilient, adaptable, and have that agility. No matter what business you go into, there's going to be changes, and sometimes those changes are going to be hard. So, for example, some people said they want to do fashion design. You know, you may have the perfect designs for clothing, but then maybe 10 years later, the trends change and people like different types of clothes. So you're going to have to adapt to that. Maybe one fabric becomes more expensive, so you'll have to find a cheaper fabric, or, you know, a fabric that is similar but not as expensive. So constantly having that mindset of how can I be better and how can I adapt to what my customer is looking for, I think is really key.
Really, really good. That's so important. I love that you highlighted that and such a great practical example, right, of how things evolve and change and how to be adaptable. Great answer. I love that. Awesome. So next, we're going to jump into knowing your strengths. And this flows really nicely from that entrepreneurial mindset to knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, and what you bring to the table. So we're going to jump into another interactive activity and would encourage everybody to type in the chat what you're good at, one thing that you feel like you're really strong at, and this can also be what are your strengths and your talents. So for me, I love writing. I feel like that's something that I bring to business, bring in my career, bring in my learning. I love writing. And so that's one of my strengths. That's one of my talents. That's something I feel like I'm good at. So that's what I would type in the chat. So want to encourage you, take a minute as I'm going through this slide and type in the chat one thing you're good at or a strength or a talent. And Madeline will be monitoring the chat as well, and she'll call some of those out that people participate with. And we've also noted some within this slide, and these are just some high-level examples. So don't feel limited by these. These are just some practical examples that could be strengths of yours. You're welcome to take one of these on the slide and type these in the chat if you feel like it fits. You can see the corresponding translation. Or you also may have something that is not on this list. So we provided these for examples as you start thinking about strengths, talents, and what you're good at. So we'll just take a minute and let people type in the chat some of their talents. And this will be so fun to see because we are on a call with so many phenomenal people. And I know there's so many strengths and talents and different things that everybody's good at. So excited to see them.
I am seeing a lot of coding, programming, technical backgrounds. That's very impressive, much more impressive than what I can do with coding, I'm sure. So that's amazing. Also, good listening. You have some fellow writers as well, Mackenzie, in the group.
I love that. And you're right, coding. That is so talented. That's amazing. So very cool.
And a good skill to have in this market.
Yeah, such a good skill. You're right. I see lots of codings. I see a public speaking. That is such a great skill. That can take people so far, just being able to orate, be able to speak well, and articulate things. That is so important in today's society, just being able to communicate well. And I see another communication one. So awesome examples. Love seeing those of good communication, communicators, public speaking. Those all kind of flow together and are just great skill sets to have. And there's so many tools and resources even online to just grow in communications. So would encourage people as well to always just be open to even just growing in communication. I think that's such a practical way that people can become even better leaders and grow in business and entrepreneurship. Any others that you want to call out, Madeline, for this slide?
I saw someone in the chat say that they are a strong leader but have zero confidence. I will let you all in on a little secret is that confidence is all about how you present yourself to others. So even if you're not feeling confident, if you just pretend to be confident, it's going to come off that you're a confident person. So what I always recommend to people is, they don't know that you may be nervous on the inside. If you're smiling and what you're saying is, strong, people are going to assume, wow, they are a really confident person. They know what they're talking about. So I always say, fake it till you make it around confidence. And the more you practice confidence, the more you'll find you become confident. I hope that helps.
So good. Such a great example. That's so good, Madeline. It's so true. It's what you show right on the external, and the fake it till you make it it's so true of you can, it's how you carry yourself. So I love that. Great example. Amazing. Love all of those in the chat. Really cool to see the communications one, painting, learning, business, coding, web applications, so many incredible talents on this call. So would encourage everybody to think about your strengths, right? Even leaving today's call, sit down with a friend or sit down with a journal or a notebook. And I'm sure Madeline and I can both attest to this in our own careers of just reflecting on our strengths and what we're good at. And sometimes just sitting down with a notebook or a piece of paper and writing down your strengths and skill sets is so important and can really help you get to the next stage and just also just know what you bring to the table as a leader in your career in entrepreneurship. So definitely would encourage that. All right. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about identifying opportunities. And we want to start off with some strategic ideas. And then it's really important to always give practical tips, right? So not just this idea, but how can you implement this, right? How can you bring this into your everyday life? So we're going to start off with some strategic ideas of what you can kind of be thinking about as you take on that entrepreneurial mindset, right? If you want to be an entrepreneur or grow in business, here's some ways to identify opportunities. And strategically, the first is, again, these are great to sit with a notebook with or a journal. Where can you bring efficiency? Is there something in the market or in business or in an organization that you think could be streamlined and could be more efficient? So that's a great question to think about. The next is, where do people need support? Is there a current issue they're facing or a current problem? And where is more support needed, right? Where do they need problem solvers? Where do they need solutions? Where do they need even more efficiency or leadership or creative ideas? So think about that as you think about identifying a problem or an issue, where is that area and where do people need support? Another thing, Madeline touched on this when she gave that example of women's fashion and trends, but this can go across the board, is what are current trends, right? This can be in the marketplace, this can be in organizations, these can be in different geographical areas. And what are current trends in the market? This is something Madeline and I are always thinking about. So definitely important as you think creatively of starting a business or taking on an entrepreneurial mindset or even just growing in entrepreneurship. What are current trends? And this can go in any sphere, sector, organization. It's not situated in one area, right? You can look at any area of interest and look at current trends in that subject. And then lastly, we talked a little bit about talents. That was so fun to see everybody's talents in the chat. And this kind of ties back to that. So what are hobbies that you could actually turn into income, right? Or revenue, or however you would like to say or think about it. Hobbies are so important, and they're often where we are the most talented. And so many famous entrepreneurs started off with a hobby, right, that they loved or they enjoyed or they were talented with, and they actually turned it into a business or an organization or something, a passion project. And so think about your hobbies and think about your talents, your strengths, everything we talked about on that last slide, and how that could tie into an entrepreneurial mindset, pathway, right, income, all those things. And then next, we want to give some practical tips. So first one is, we mentioned this, keep a creative journal of business ideas and a notebook. That is something I have. I've gone through so many notebooks in different times in my life where I'm just writing down my ideas and my goals. And it's really, really important. And it's always powerful because you can come back to these in different months, different years, and you remember, wow, 3 months ago, that was really on my mind to start to take this class or get this certificate or learn about this subject or learn this new language. And I often come back to it 3 months later, and I always think, wow, that's so exciting that I was thinking about that. I already forgot about that. And so that's something that I do regularly. I don't know, Madeline, if you have any other practical tips too, like just personally, that you want to share too that aren't on this list. But I would say the notebook creative journal one is something that is a part of my everyday life. I have a notebook that's just for creative ideas and goals, and it has a fun quote on the front. And this is something that I come back to all the time, and I'm always writing down my creative ideas and goals in my career. And it's always fun to see how I grow 3 months or 6 months down the line when I come back and look at that and either see what I've accomplished or just see what's still on the list and what I want to add. And then I'll go through these next ones, and then Madeline, I'll pass it to you if you have any, is where can you test your ideas? Is there any place that, or friend group, right, or organization that you could test your ideas and say, I have this idea, I want to share this, see what people think, get reactions. Sharing your idea with a mentor or trusted leader. If you have trusted people in your life, one thing I'm so passionate about is mentorship and mentoring the next generation, or having different age groups mentor each other, because often people who are ahead of us, right, by years have a lot of insights and knowledge and wisdom that they can pass down. And so mentorship is so important no matter what age you are. If you're in college, you might have knowledge and wisdom and advice for a high schooler, right? Or somebody still in grade school. If you're in your early 30s or 40s, you might have a lot of wisdom to offer 20-year-olds and things like that. So mentorship is so important and something that really can make a difference in people's lives. And then going back to current trends. So explore current trends, issues, right, problems, things that need sustainability, right, or creativity, things in the marketplace, global issues. These are really, really great places to start if you're interested in a entrepreneurial avenue and you want to make impact.
I'm sorry, Mackenzie, the screen is, we see only white screen. We don't see anything.
Oh, let me reshare. No
It looks like another individual is sharing their screen. Nasria, as the meeting host, are you able to remove that screen? You
Yeah,
can.
sure. I'll see that.
All right, let me know when you guys can see my screen again.
Yep, we
Yes,
can
we
see
can
it.
see it now.
Perfect.
Amazing. Okay, thanks so much. No problem at all. So I would say those are practical tips. So if you're taking notes, I would say think about identifying opportunities in strategic ideas, which you can see right here, and then think about practical tips. So strategically, what questions can you ask? And practical tips, how can you implement this in your everyday life, right? Leaving today's session. But Madeline, anything that you would add as just a practical tip of how you've kind of grown in your career or navigated things or been successful? Anything that comes to mind? And it's okay if not.
No worries. Happy to share. I definitely think the idea under practical tips of sharing ideas with your mentor or trusted leader has been super helpful for me throughout my career and honestly throughout my life. And your mentors may change. When you're younger, you may look up to a parent or a relative and ask for their thoughts. But then as you get older, it can be someone in your neighborhood. It can be if you work somewhere specifically, it can be a coworker or a leader at your job, and just taking time with them to not just talk about work, but really on a broader scale, speak to them about where you want to grow and get their ideas on it. I think sometimes you may have an idea, but we talk about confidence a lot and not have the confidence of, well, maybe this won't be successful, or maybe this isn't a good idea. But taking that time to talk to someone you trust, to get their feedback on your ideas, one confirms that you may be going down the right road, or they may introduce an idea that maybe you hadn't, they talk about your idea in a way you hadn't thought before. So, use the community around you, especially too, like as women, we're all together right now. This is always, use the community you have built around you to share ideas, to coach each other and mentor each other.
Great practical tip. Really love that on mentorship. That's great. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Awesome example. All right, so we'll jump to the next slide here. And now we're going to kind of pivot into developing entrepreneurial ideas. And this flows from kind of those strategic ideas and questions we were asking and practical tips. And this is going to kind of go a layer deeper for looking into some of that information, identifying opportunities, all those things. We want to be asking questions strategically, right? So as we're thinking about developing entrepreneurial ideas, we want to be asking strategic questions, and we're going to run through those really quick. But the first one is determine who your audience is, right? You can also say customer. You want to determine who you want to bring impact to. So this is the who. And we've kind of broken this down to the who, what, how. And this is kind of how you can have this entrepreneurial mindset of thinking of questions. But determine who you want to bring impact to. Who do you want to help? Who do you want to bring solutions for? Who do you want to help problem solve with? So the who is important, and that can be asked with who is your audience, right? Is it another organization? Is it a specific group of people? Is it a specific company, right? You want to know who your audience is. So that's a really important practical step you can ask. The next is the what. And this goes back to the problem you're trying to solve, the issue you're trying to bring change for. What is the what? So you can kind of write these down if you're taking notes, the who, what, how. And this next one, what problem are you trying to solve, right? Are you trying to bring more creativity to this avenue in the market? Are you trying to solve this global issue? Are you trying to bring sustainability somewhere? Are you trying to start your own business through solving the problem of X, right? So what's the what? And take some time to think about that. And then lastly is the how. How are you going to bring a solution to them? And so this can be asked in what is the solution, right? How are you going to bring the solution? What is the creative answer for the solution? And so we've broken those down into those 3 questions, and in really simple terms, I think about those in the who, what, how context, and getting those answers written down, right? Or kind of digested in my own mind. And that helps me really develop strong ideas in entrepreneurship. And then next, on the bottom of this slide, you can see practical business planning tips. So anybody who's asking these questions, they want to start their own organization, they want to start their own business, they just want to step into entrepreneurship more. Some great tips for just getting started, and don't be limited by this list. This is just some quick things that can get you started. There's many more, right? We've talked a lot about networking, building your confidence, getting mentors, but even more strategically on the avenue of business planning, write up a mock business plan, right? With some of these questions answered. You know, who's your audience, your problem you're bringing a solution for, how are you going to do it? Look at your market, right? Look at the people around you that are either already doing this problem solving, they already have this solution, they've already started something here. What's working well, right? What needs more innovation? So sometimes just looking at the current market and trends of, you know, who's already doing this really helps, right? Because it can help you think really strategically about how to bring innovation or even more creativity. And then define your vision and the value you want to bring. So this is a really good goal setting activity, but write down the vision for what you want to do. Who is it you want to help, right? And what is it you're trying to solve, right? It's part of that question up here in the what. So think about defining your vision and making it really clear. Writing it down on a piece of paper and with goals can be really helpful. Finding your target market. This can also be read as finding your audience, right? Finding where you want to bring impact to and in what market that's in, what organization, where is that geographically located, what part of the globe, what company, any of those questions. Just finding your target market can also be asked, and find where you want to bring impact. And then identify ways you can generate revenue. This is important, right? If we want to generate revenue from these entrepreneurial ideas, or we want it to be income-based, right? Or have it make money for us, we want to generate revenue in our businesses, right? So think about if we're starting our own clothing business or organization, what is a way we're going to bring revenue? What is a way that we're going to make impact and have that go hand in hand? So brainstorm ways that you can generate revenue if that's something that you want to do in your business or entrepreneurship. And again, these slides aren't limited to these things, but just great questions to journal or jot in your notebook as you're thinking about growing in your professional careers, navigating your career, if you want to start something on your own, if you want to join a company. Awesome. And next, we're going to jump into some strategies and tips for success in navigating your career and in business. We have this slide, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about interviews as well. Feel free to type in your questions in the chat as well. But strategies for success. So we want to give you all resources, tips, tools that you can walk away with as you think about career navigation and entrepreneurship and growing in business. The first is, and Madeline and I, if we have any personal examples or just ideas that come to mind too, we'll share these. But the first one is start small. But start, right? Sometimes it's really hard to get started, right? Because we don't feel confident or we don't feel like we have all the resources. And sometimes just taking the first step can make all the difference. Building a strong support network, making sure we have mentors around us or a community, people that are supportive of what we're doing. Validate our idea, right? And this goes back to the test it, ask some friends, ask your community, ask trusted leaders of, is this a great business idea? How do you think this is going to make impact? Do you think this will be successful? Right? Trial and error. Those are really, really practical things to do before getting started. If you don't know a lot about finance, I know I'm always trying to learn about finance, and sometimes just learning basic finance tools or entrepreneurial tips in cash flow management, things like that, generating revenue, that's always really important. And even just kind of basic 101 classes, there's so many tools and resources online can really help you if you don't feel like you know a lot about finance. Embrace technology and digital tools. I think so many people on this call have already great technology and sounds like digital design experience, coding, all those things. Continue to embrace technology, right? Technology is advancing at rapid paces all over the globe, and to be able to feel like we have an understanding of technology as women in entrepreneurship is so important. Be adaptable, be flexible, right? Agile, ready to pivot, and invest in personal branding. If anybody's, really creative on the call or knows how to do creative design or marketing, that can go such a long way. So if anybody knows how to do those things, like use those strengths to your advantage, right? Whether it's creating, different branding tools or resources to kind of generate visibility, this can go a long way in getting an entrepreneurial idea developed. We talked a little bit about mentors and advisors. This is so important, right? And, Madeline mentioned, which was so important, these can change, right? So you may have a mentor in your life for a season or a couple months that's really important. And then years later, you could, get a new mentor or leader that's a trusted advisor. So this can definitely change throughout your life, but these are just people that are trusted in your community, people that can kind of help you grow in your career. Keep learning and upgrading your skills. So this is really important. There's so many resources online, support networks for this, classes, books, training resources, all the things. Keep learning. And that goes back to that entrepreneurial mindset that we get to have as women, and just wanting to grow, wanting to enhance our skills, learn something new. So would encourage everybody to do that in their free time. And then write down 3 specific steps that you want to step into or accomplish, or goals that you want to reach over the next 30 days. And this is such a practical tip because it ties well with the first one of start small. And sometimes just having 3 quick steps that you can accomplish in the next month can really help you take the first step and get started. And then lastly, find an accountability partner. Is there somebody that's a trusted friend, family member, sibling, somebody that you feel like you could share your ideas with, and just get reactions from, or advice from, or input from as you grow in this entrepreneurial mindset? And then before we jump into our next slide, which is really fun, with interviews, Madeline, anything else you would add to this list, or just an example that you would share that comes to mind in your own career?
No, I think this is a good starting point for the list. I definitely want to emphasize, like I mentioned, already seeking mentors and advisors, but I really want to push also to continue learning and upgrading your skills. Mackenzie, as you mentioned, there are so many resources online. I was calling out all of the amazing coders because I recently started taking coding classes because I recognize that that's a really important skill, and that's going to help me in my own career growth. So no matter where you are in your own career, whether you're just now starting a business or you're just starting your career, or you're becoming more senior in your career, there's always opportunities to continue learning. And I think that also circles back to the idea of being adaptable and agile, where you recognize that there's changes in your business that you're working on, and that you need to either upskill or upgrade your skills to complement those changes in business. The people that fall behind are the people that assume that they know everything and that they don't need to learn any new skills and they're going to be perfect in their job. But that's just the world we live in now, that things are rapidly changing. The skills that are needed now for what you do may not be the skills you need in 10 years. So always being open to learning and growing is so, so important.
Love that. That's so good. Really, really great examples. And I love that last part of just being open to learning, upgrading those skills. We get to constantly learn and grow. And so just taking the opportunity to do that in the however ways that you can. So awesome. Great examples. And now I'm going to pass it to Madeline, and she's going to talk a little bit about interviews, what that looks like, the importance of them, and just practical ways to navigate them. So Madeline, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Mackenzie. And hi, everyone. I know I didn't formally introduce myself, but I'm Madeline, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm going to speak a bit, as Mackenzie said, about interviews. And we just have one slide on this, but I have given hour-long, sometimes 2-hour-long presentations on interviews. So I'm going to try to keep this concise and short and touch on the high levels. But I think the big takeaway in regards to this conversation around interviews is you may think, well, I'm starting my own business. I don't need to do interviews because I'm not, applying to a company. However, if you are an entrepreneur or looking to start your own business, every time you talk to someone, maybe either, about your business, whether it's, would you like to invest in my business? Or you're trying to encourage someone to become a customer in your business. Or even, encouraging someone to be an employee of your business if you start employing people. All of those you can think of as kind of mini interviews, because you're really, the takeaways of the interviews are still the same. So first, with that entrepreneurial mindset, make sure that you're asking good questions, being authentic, you've understood the purpose of your company so that you can clearly explain it to people. Think of the what, how, and who that we talked about on previous slides. So clearly explaining to either an investor, a customer, or an employee what customers your employees support, or your business supports, what problem is it solving. Think of that like an interview. Now, on the side, we can think more about traditional interviews. So if you're just applying to any job, there are similar things to take away. So the first is know the company, research the company's mission, values, and culture. You can find all of this information more often than not online, especially if it's a large company. They will have their mission posted, their values, and showing in that interview that you've done that research tells the individual who's interviewing you, wow, they've really studied. They're really interested. They're not just, looking to get something out of me. They're not just taking this interview and we're one of 10 interviews they're having today. It shows that you value the time and you value the company. With research goes understanding the role. So really studying that job description, and with looking at the job description, find either it says, it'll say skills or activities, and find opportunities that you can draw from your own life that says, wow, I have these skills to do this job. So I think an example of this is, say you are working, you are interested in joining, we'll stay with the fashion, joining a clothing company, and the job description includes, sewing a skirt. You can say, oh, I actually have skills in that area where I, for so many years, would always patch up my own skirts. So I actually have a lot of skills around being a seamstress. So once again, showing you did your research, showing you didn't just apply to the job because it was in a long list of job applications, but you're really interested in it. Industry knowledge, that's similar again to research. And we talked about staying agile and always making sure reading latest news, you're talking to leaders in the field so that you understand what this job and this company is doing at a broader scale. There's a couple ones that touch on this, but preparing questions, this is so, so important. I think it's a common misconception that when you are in an interview, the person that is interviewing you will be asking the questions. But actually, I like to say that it's about 50-50. You should take that opportunity first to ask genuine questions. Sometimes the job description isn't clear, or you're interested more about the company. That is your chance to get tangible questions from them to make sure it's a good fit for you. But additionally, too, this is your chance to show that you've done your research, either about industry, the job description, or the company, because you can say, hi, I recently heard about your company in the news, and I heard that you won this big contract. How do you think that this contract is going to affect X, Y, and Z in the next year? And that once again makes them say, wow, they really are interested. That is what you are trying to push in the interviews, is that you are genuine, you are interested in this company, and you are genuinely interested in this job description. Tailoring your resume, we already talked about asking good questions. Really, the leftover points around being authentic, expressing gratitude, body language, eye contact, posture, smile, all of that encompasses showing that you care, showing that you are taking the time and you are genuinely interested in this position. And once again, a lot of the eye contact, posture, smile, that is helpful for formal interviews or also informal interviews that I talked about if you're starting your own business. So think about those interviews where you're asking for, investment from someone. Showing that gratitude for them being there, and then showing those physical traits that make people want to continue to engage in conversation with you. If I'm talking to someone and I'm looking down at my feet and my shoulders are hunched over and I'm not looking at them in the eye, they're probably going to assume that I don't really want to talk to them and I'm not interested in talking to them. And that may not be the case. I may not realize I'm doing that. So that's why it's really important that we pay attention to our body language. So, if we want to come off open and engaged, we should look them in the eye. We should have our shoulders up tall and straight. We should smile at them. And a lot of this comes naturally, but it's important to just be aware, because I know there's sometimes things I do that I don't realize comes off a certain way. And this also, we talked a bit about accountability partners and mentors. Practicing interviews is the best way to become good at interviews. I promise you, no one ever went to their first interview ever and did an amazing job, like a perfect job. They couldn't have done anything better. Most of the time, people's first interview, there's a lot of room for improvement. So the best way to improve is to practice. So find your accountability partner, have you interview them, have them interview you, and every time it gets a little bit better. At my university, I worked as a career advisor, and that's what I did for 3 to 4 hours a day, was I would help people practice interviews. And that helped me become good at interviews too, because I got to see, oh, I like that they did this, or, I maybe wouldn't have done it that way. So practice makes perfect. Similar to confidence, the more you practice, the easier it becomes. So it may be awkward the first time, but it gets better and better. Mackenzie, is there anything to add here? Either any tips on interviewing, anything that you have found that you that has worked best for you?
I love all of those tips and that overview. That was so incredible, and I think it just provided such a comprehensive view of just the importance of interviews. So that was awesome. And I would say the ones that stuck out and resonated too with me personally is the body language. Just even as women, right, if we don't always feel confident, body language can carry people such a long way, right? With how we carry ourselves, even if we're on a screen, right? Even if we're on a virtual interview, even if we're in person, having good posture, sitting up straight, like Madeline mentioned, eye contact, smiling, all these things. Expressing gratitude in our communications. This is all part of just how we carry ourselves and how we come across. And this is such a big part of it. So I would say, even if you don't feel confident, we've all been in interviews that we're so nervous for, right? We don't feel like we're qualified, or we're not feeling fully confident that day. And sometimes just sitting up straight, right, and smiling and having that good posture and knowing the importance of body language can be such a game changer. So I think that is so important that you mentioned that one. And then I would just say asking good questions. Like, no matter what, just having one or two questions that you can ask, it just really shows that you're as interested in them as they are in you. And even if it's just one small question at the end, but just having something that you can ask, right? It doesn't need to be this list of 10 questions, but just having one or two questions about them or their company or their experience can go such a long way and just show authenticity. It can show your true personality. It can build trust, and it can just show genuineness. So I would say those are the two that would resonate with me so much too. All of them did, but I would say those two stuck out too as just really, really important ones to double click on.
Yeah, thanks, Mackenzie. That was awesome.
Amazing. And I would just say interviews, I think it's so important too. Madeline mentioned like formal and informal interviews. And so just thinking on that, it doesn't always have to be this formal interview that you're coming in for your first, second, and third and fourth interview for this job, right? These also can be informal in ways of business deals or investors or networking or just getting to know people. So just bringing these skills and these same questions and practical tips into other conversations is a really good way to look at it too.
Yeah, and I'll add, Mackenzie, to once again on the topic of entrepreneurship. You may think, I think a misconception sometimes is that employees won't or employers won't want to hire you because you have have that entrepreneurial mindset. But a lot of times it's actually the opposite. They want people that have that mindset, because that means, think of those key skills we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. That means that you have confidence, you're agile, you're always looking at new trends and new ideas. So who wouldn't want that for their business? So also during the interviews, don't be afraid to touch on those traits. Be like, I am always interested in, I want to grow the company. I have all of these great ideas that I want to institute. That's, as an employer, that's what's really interesting to us. We don't want people that are just going to do, the same old and not think about what's going to happen in 2 years or 5 years. So take everything that you've learned and apply it to any interviews like this, any formal interviews that you might have with companies.
So true. Yep, that's such good advice. Really, really great example. Amazing. And I see some comments too in the chat. Yeah, interviews are so important to think about, right? Formally and informally. So take these tips away and just think of ways to bring them into your everyday life.